there, welcome back to Garage Time. Today's exciting item on the list is the fuel system. Now, I've completely revamped the fuel system on this car, starting with the fuel pump. It's now in the tank and it has dual lines running to the rear. So today's goal is to attach the engine to those rear lines, but I've also thought ahead on the engine that's going to be going in this car will be electronic fuel injection. So the fuel pump will support those pressures, like 40 to 50 pounds of pressure. But my little 912 engine is carbureted, and that's way too much pressure for the carburetor. So I'm going to be installing some fuel pressure regulators today, and I'll go into more detail as we get through it. But this system will support a lot of horsepower and also run my 912 engine. So the main regulator for my car is by Holley. It's an American-made part, and it's going in a German car. No big deal for me. This is a RESTOMOD, and I pick the best parts no matter where they're made from. This one's got some cool features. Number one, it's a bypass regulator, meaning the inlet comes in here, the outlet is regulated, goes to the EFI, or in my case, my carburetors, and whatever's not used is returned out the bottom to the tank. That's why there's lines, two lines to and from the tank, so you can take fuel and then return what you don't need. That is great for things like vapor lock. With California fuels, one of my concerns is vapor lock. When your car sits for a while, the lines heat up, it causes bubbles in the fuel lines. This is going to return those bubbles right back to the tank and get fresh fuel that is cool from the bottom of the tank and send it to the engine so it will start and run without any fuel pressure issues. This has a removable spring. I can convert this to anywhere from 65 pounds at the high range down to about 9 pounds using the lighter spring, which is a little bit too high for my Weber carburetor. So I'll probably use a secondary regulator in addition to this one. It also has a vacuum port, which can be useful if you're running EFI. Under idle conditions or slow speed conditions, it will reduce the pressure a little bit. Just makes the fuel pump run a little easier and quieter. So this is a nice piece of equipment for any car, especially my German one. Then here's another regulator. This one is not a bypass regulator, but it's going to take the output of the main regulator and flow right to the carburetors. So this one has an inlet at the bottom. It's going to flow to both carburetors, and this one can be dialed down anywhere between 1 psi and 4 psi. So that's perfect for the Weber carburetors that's currently on this engine. Solex, whatever I end up using, will work at the correct pressure all the time. So I'm looking now for the best place to attach that fuel pressure regulator, and I'm thinking about putting it in this area here because I'm not using the stock electrical panel. So I have those holes to fill anyways, and I can probably cover 2 of them up with the fuel pressure regulator. This pressure regulator comes with a little bracket, so it just attaches to the bottom, 2 screws, and I think I might be able to put it against this wall right here. Turns out these 2 mounting holes do correspond to these giant holes here, just like that. The alternative to here would be to put it, right here in the center. But it would have to be mounted kind of high because there's a return. So I could attach it to this removable panel. Yeah, I think I've decided to put it on the back firewall here just to keep the lines as short as possible. And I'm going to, instead of centering it, I'm going to shift it to the left just a little bit. I think there's a lot less heat exposed here towards the firewall than there is right here because all the exhaust system is right here, and the hot engine, all that heat rises up and goes out this deck lid hole. So it's going to be flowing right here. I think there's a little bit less heat flowing here through the back, and this is insulated here. There's a seal right here as well, but I think for me, I can justify this position probably the best. Keeps the lines the shortest and also keeps it out of the heat. There's the holes. Drill them. This is the return line here, and this is the supply line to the engine. This is the clutch cable. I can kind of move this out of the way for now. And this thing will bend down. It's just the way it's run in the car. Just has a little bit of tension on it because it is a stiff stainless line. So I have this fitting right here, which is a sort of male on this side, and then it's going to go to a flex hose on this side. This is the high pressure side, so I'm going to see if I can thread that in right there. Just going to loop this paracord around here and just pull this down so I have more access. You can probably just bend this tube slightly. There we go. So I'll put the hose on there before I put it on finally, but I'm also going to get the transmission carrier and make sure that this is not going to get in the way. Which goes just like that. This fitting has plenty of room because this bracket has a big dip in it. And even if these motor mounts are compressed or flexed, there's plenty of room. It's not going to crush the fuel line or the fuel fitting. So this nut, instead of a -6 AN, is a -5 AN. And that was probably, it's probably going to need an adapter now because most of the hoses are all 6 AN. I can try to get a 5 AN rubber hose, but it's unlikely. I'm using this black braided hose. This is high pressure hose for EFI, and it's also E85 compliant, or at least tolerant to it. So it'll handle the ethanol. This duct tape's a little strong. Okay. And then we just jam it onto this fitting. I have this fitting, it's in my vise with some soft jaws. Let me show you. Let me see how far that went in. I'm not sure if it's all the way in. Oh yeah, it's all the way on. So that doesn't look too bad. I just use this plastic spreader to kind of push those fibers down inside the cone so it locks it all together. And then this side is the portion that goes over the hose. I'm just going to put a little oil on that, and then what that does is it really pushes the inside diameter of the hose up against the inside diameter of this cone. It really creates a seal. Just using a little bit of 3-in-1 oil. Just like 2 drops. And with any luck, this will all sort of stay together. I don't have the recommended aluminum wrench, so this one fits a little bit loose. I think I'm just going to wrap it in some tape and hope for the best. All right, that doesn't, this is a little too thick. Let me look for a metric wrench that might work. I couldn't find a wrench that would work from the metric toolbox, so I'm just going to, basically I have a little tape on one side. If it scratches, it scratches. It's just a fuel line. Okay, this feels right to me. I didn't particularly find any instructions on how far this gap should be closed down, but it feels like it's right to me. I'm going to use this as is. That's the completed hose end. And the fuel line is here, it's in, and I've got it routed up through, this is where the factory ran the fuel hose, I believe. It was either this one or this one. I think it's going up high, probably up through this loop too. But now I'm trying to decide, somewhere between here and the regulator, I should put the fuel filter. There is a fuel screen inside the tank, but I also want to have something a little bit finer back here, probably like a 10 or 20 micron filter for carburetors. So I'm thinking about either mounting that filter here or down here where the stock fuel pump goes. This thing has got a really heavy bracket on here. It's nice and protected. So I could route the hose back down into here and run a protected fuel filter down low. Or I could put a fuel filter up high inside the engine bay, way up here next to the fuel regulator. My gut feeling is to keep it hidden out of the way with most of the connections down low. So if it does leak, it's not going to catch anything on fire. I don't have the fuel filter yet, but I can make a bracket that would secure a big one right down here, and that should last a long time. Ugh, that's tough to cut. Kind of the same situation, gotta kind of go back and clean up some of those fibers with scissors. The tape helps a little bit, but it might actually, I should try cutting this maybe with just a cutoff wheel. Might actually work better. This is the line connected to the regulator. It's pretty tidy, back here behind this bolt. It's pretty stress-free. Goes underneath, and then it's gonna go here to the fuel filter, and then here it goes right to the tunnel. The return, which comes from here, is just gonna go straight down. There is some space in here. It's gonna go straight down, probably just a barbed fitting. The return line is very low pressure. It's unrestricted all the way to the tank. So probably just a hose barb on that one. Straight down, it's gonna go through here, right to this fitting. I made another line. This one is for the front. It's gonna go between the tank and those tunnel lines. And I've already measured. It's a little harder to show you at the front of the car. Plus it's dark outside. There's no light coming in. Okay guys, underneath here are the fuel lines. Only the supply side's connected. You can see this fitting right here. It takes a 90 degree. This is a high flow fitting. So it's going up and over the rack, and then it comes out where the rack is. Right here, it comes out and goes into the tank. This is like a 45 degree, also a high flow fitting. So you can see how it connects right there to the tank. Now this portion is the return, and I'm going to have to, probably put a hose barb on this one because it's pretty tight. This one sits a little lower in the tank and it's really close to this cross member. So I'm gonna have to come up with another fitting for this one. I have a 90 degree fitting, kind of like this one here. See, this one seems to work okay on this side for the return. And if it's restrictive, it's okay because it's just the return. There's really no pressure in this line as it goes right to the tank and vents to the vent. So I need to rig up something a little bit more careful on this one, and I'm out of fittings. So I need to go to my computer and order some more parts to get the return side done, both in the engine bay and in this section. These connections are much more secure than the original plastic hose ones. Still left with this little regulator, and this is the one that takes the pressure from 9 PSI roughly to about 3, somewhere in that range for the Webers. I think every carburetor is a little different. But this is a lightweight aluminum, and I think my method on this one is going to be to attach it to the back of the 912 engine. Because when the 912 engine goes, the regulator is not going to be needed. So probably where I'll mount it is somewhere back here on the back of the fan shroud. And the fuel comes in from the bottom, and then it gets branched out to each of the carburetors. Okay, these fittings here are massive. These are, I think, NPT fittings. No O-ring, no AN style. So I'm gonna have to get some more hardware and fittings for this to work out. So add it to the list. I'm sure you figured this out by now, but none of these videos that I make are rehearsed or pre-installed. All the stuff I'm going through is actual problem solving, custom fuel lines, this is just what it takes. You can't always get all the right fittings the first time, or at least I can't. One of the regulators installed, there's still one more. So I'm gonna say there's one more to do. And also front fuel lines to tank. I think this is pretty much done. It's the low pressure side that will be much easier and just requires a couple more parts. That'll take about probably 30 minutes once the parts are here. So a little more progress, and thank you guys again for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video. Leave me a comment, let me know what your thoughts are. If you have any good ideas on a fuel filter, I'm still gonna be shopping for a fuel filter too. Thank you again.